From the Ron McKeefery Podcast Network, I'm Isaiah Castilleja, and this is Iron Game Chalk Talk 2.0. In this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk 2.0, CEO of Kineon, Forrest Smith, talks to us about what red light therapy is and how it can help people, the importance of defining who you are and what you'd like to bring to people around you when starting a business or managing others, and how personal experience can lead to a great deal of motivation. All this on another episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk 2.0. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk 2.0. Today, I'm joined by Forrest Smith. He is the CEO and co-founder of Kineon, recovery technology that I've been fortunate enough to use over the past year, but specifically over the last 2 months as I'm recovering from, a ruptured patella tendon. Welcome to the podcast, Forrest, and I appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I can't tell you how honored I am to be here. Such a kind invitation. And I love to hear what's happening with, not, I always have to qualify that. Like, I hate to hear that you're in pain and the surgery. I'm not a psycho or anything, but it does help to know that we can actually do something to move the needle and improve that for you.
Definitely. And I've been using Kineon as a recovery tool for before, when I was working out or running a lot, get sore, just general aches and pains. I definitely use Kineon to help me, recover. And I put it on every night before bed, right after I get home. And now it's an active part of my recovery. Could you tell us a little bit about your role at Kineon and then also how y'all came up with the technology?
Absolutely. Without going too crazy into it, my business partner and I met probably 4 or 5 years ago, and we spent probably 2 months just going through and defining what our mission was going to be as a team. And before we even chose a product or a technology or anything, and what that came down to was improving the quality of life for the largest number of people we can in the most measurable way we can. And there was a really powerful way to do that with red light therapy. We dug into 6 or 7 different technologies, and the difference between the lab level and then what people could actually use at home. Red light therapy and laser therapy would just had the highest place where you could kind of apply really sophisticated engineering and a really strong supply chain and good design, and bring something to market that was actually going to help people change their life, and really kind of just bring that lab level 30, 40, $50,000 equipment into people's homes. And the big thing about the home is, if you got to go to the clinic, you're going to do it once a month, once every 2 weeks, maybe something like this. But when you can do it at home, this is actually something that can replace uh, you know, NSAIDs and opiates, and keep you away from pain and in the healing process a lot faster. And so we've spent the last years of our lives really kind of diving in and modeling how photons deliver through tissue. So how do we distribute these photons to the correct photoacceptors to get the best outcomes in the world? And I think we're something like 17,000 hours into that now as a product team, building out these mathematical models and testing them and then rebuilding them and retesting them. And it really separates what you can expect from these type of devices in the treatment. And so that's how we come to be here today. We're here just kind of trying to help people get out of pain and back into movement as much as we can.
Definitely. And can you talk a little bit more about the red light therapy? And I see on the side of the device I have, it has like a laser one, and there's also like a red light. So can you talk a little bit about the difference for the strength and conditioning coach that may not be well versed in like modalities for, recovery?
Absolutely. So one of the things that's really cool about laser therapy is you're essentially treating things in a 3D manner. So there's a lot of things out there with LEDs, and LEDs disperse light in kind of a big spray. It's kind of like a shotgun. And there's some things you can shoot with a shotgun. There's some things you need a sniper rifle for. And I think that's kind of how we think about what we do. Is if you're trying to treat your skin, if your wife has a mask, the LEDs are not a bad way to go approach that. If you're trying to treat a cut on your skin and have that wound heal, treating in that kind of flat planar 2D way is something that LEDs are not bad at. When you want to treat in a way that gets through all of your tissue and deeper in the body and really treats on a more kind of targeted way, that's what the lasers are for. And we were actually trying to avoid it when we started because we didn't know if it was going to make huge differences. So we did a bunch of testing around this, and the lasers make a massive difference both from pain and inflammation and recovery. But some of the things that we actually trigger with this are increased blood flow, decreased chronic inflammation. And so I do try to kind of dive in and give a little separation for the acute versus the chronic. A lot of the acute inflammatory markers that you can measure actually are not bad for you. It's something that you want there. It's promoting additional growth hormones in the area. Um, and you can do things like, one of the things that we've seen a lot of the literature about recently is cold plunging. I love cold plunging. I got a cold plunge here. We use it for a number of different things. But if you're using it for joint treatment, so if you have an injury, you sprain your ankle, you have a patellar tendonitis, you have a patellar rupture, you have any kind of traumatic tissue damage like this, when you're suppressing the inflammation, both on the chronic and the acute side, you actually lose some of that recovery that you would have otherwise. And so it's one of the things where people have kind of been moving away from the cold plunge for hypertrophy training or for recovery training and things like this. Um, it's again, I love it. I think there's a neurological impact that's really powerful and some great neurotransmitter changes and things like this. But with what you can do with the laser therapy, you can actually get the best of both worlds. We just specifically target these kind of limiting inflammatory markers, and we don't target those acute ones. So, and then reduced oxidative stress is actually one of the more powerful ones, and we don't talk about it quite as much because it's. I think you have a very technical audience, so I think I'll go into it a little bit more if you don't mind. The you know when you increase the cellular level energy production, what happens out of the mitochondria is you remove these bottlenecks for energy production, and when you remove those bottlenecks, there's some downstream signaling cascades for oxidative stress that are super powerful. And so, a couple of things just to kind of highlight how powerful that is. When people are able to use laser therapy for heartaches or ischemia or strokes, the tissue just doesn't die at the same rate. I mean, really resistant to kind of dying from strokes and things like this. So if you have one around your house and someone's having a stroke, this is something that you can put on and see like a 90% retention above what you would see from a kind of a standard experience with that. So even when it's really heavy, crazy pathologies like this, the protective effects for the cells are just much more clearly demonstrated. And that's not what we designed our product for, but it's just a really good highlight for what light therapy and laser therapy can really do in helping the cells protect themselves. Um, and then the last one is so we kind of go through those main four pillars. And the last one is reducing pain, and most of that's related to inflammatory triggered pain. But also just generating more energy helps your tissue recover faster and move away from that chronic pain in so many cases. And so we use osteoarthritis, non-specific lower back pain, recovery from joints, ankle sprains. There's some really powerful impacts where you can reduce the pain and just get back into that movement and recovery much, much faster. So, yeah, hopefully that I have a bad habit of going down the rabbit holes on these different biochemical sides. So I'm trying to keep it a little bit light, but yeah, it's just exciting to see what you can do with this technology. And as it continues to improve, what kind of outcomes people are seeing from that.
No, definitely, and I think that's important. And you didn't fall down any rabbit hole. Like it's we are all this is right down our wheelhouse of what we're looking for and everything. And what inspired you to go down this pathway? Because you mentioned you had your business partner, and then y'all figured out what the business was. Like, what inspired you to do this part of the rehab process?
So the personal thing, they say with starting a business, if you can scratch your own itch, it's a great way to kind of at least understand who your customers are and what they're feeling. I tore my meniscus and my MCL grappling when I was younger, and I've yeah, at the time I done it, I was out of competitive sports. Sometimes you'll see those go into surgery for while you're in competitive sports, but I was kind of done with it, so I wasn't using those as much. What I found over time was it would just swell up, and had more inflammation there, and I just stopped moving as much. And you don't notice it. It's kind of boiling the frog, right? Like just that temperature keeps going up and up and up, but it's slowly. And so by the time I got to my mid 30s, I had put on, 60 pounds. I had stopped playing ball. I had stopped training. I like that one injury had affected my mental space, my relationships, my physical kind of outlook on life. And knowing that there were solutions for this where we could kind of solve my own problem. And then also the other one that was really kind of, close to home for me was my parents. My parents are in their 70s now. And, one of the things that you see as people get older is the two things I would say that were most useful for them is osteoarthritis. You can start seeing your joints having more pain. People stop moving as much, and there's a very slippery slope for that. And then also bone density. Particularly in women as they get older, if they're not doing heavy lifting, which their generation, just women didn't do that as much. They weren't out kind of deadlifting and squatting and stuff, and you see it more now. But at their generation, they weren't doing that, and so that's two things that we could really move the needle for them on, and they're both in great shape now. It's helped their cardiovascular health. There's actually a plasticity. I do my early morning training every day with the lasers is over my carotid, kind of the largest blood vessels that are accessible in your body, but it makes sure instead of your arteries and veins stiffening over time, this cardiovascular endothelial tissue actually retains plasticity, and that's the biggest thing you can do to kind of reduce the risk of it, which is the number one risk for older people right now is that heart disease. So whenever you can kind of move the needle like that, both for yourself and your family, it just felt like a really good way for us to go put our time into it. And then again, it was in line with our mission for helping people have a solution that's not addictive like opiates or kind of self tissue degrading like the NSAIDs that are out there. There wasn't a good gold standard, and I feel like we've just worked really hard to try to provide one.
Definitely. And you had mentioned now that you have that all lined up and you're ready to go, what is a piece of advice you'd give to, let's say, a sports performance coach is starting their own business, or they're about to become the head strength coach where they're in charge of managing the whole department? And like, what would you tell them for, all right, like you made the decision, you got the job, or you started your own business, and like you made the decision to, create Kineon. What's some advice for those first time business owners or directors of what they could see when you're starting to venture out on your own?
Oh, I love it. I think it's a great question. I think in so many cases with folks who are in the kind of physiology side of things, we just find this. It's really positive, forward-thinking people who are trying to make a positive impact on everyone around them. I think one thing that really helped us was just take a little time and think about what that means for you. What is How can you codify that and make that your mission? How can you capture your mission with things? Because you're going to hit like all of us do. Like the business is going to grow some, it's going to be great months, but there's also going to be these really nasty downturns. And if you get up and you have that mission clearly in your mind, and you've taken the time to define that, you know what you're working for. Again, like for me, I related back so much to family and health in general. But as you start going in and seeing the outcomes that people have, and I think this is also very similar to strength and conditioning and kind of physiology and really anybody who's in the space. What you'd like to be able to do is see a trajectory, kind of that progressive overload trajectory of someone being measurably better from having interacted with you, and like how you measure that, how you kind of count that, everybody's going to be a little bit different, but those mission points of really kind of just stating clearly who you are and what you'd like to be able to bring to those people around you, just helps you carry through so much of the hard times for it. And it also helps people, like we've found so many people in building this business, that have just been drawn magnetically to us. And you find your tribe when you know who you are and what you're working for. The right people, like the right everything just comes to you at the right time. And it really helps kind of defining those things and trying to communicate them as clearly as possible, not just for yourself, but for your team, for your athletes, for everyone around you. It continues to gain momentum over time, I think.
Thanks everyone for listening. Thank you to our great guests for taking the time to share their experiences. Thank you to Play and Team Builder for being great companies that help our profession. And most importantly, thank you, the listeners. Please find us on social media at Iron Game Chalk Talk 2.0. Find our show notes on wherever you listen to your podcasts. Leave us a rating, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to say hi. It's great to hear from coaches from around the country. Talk to you all next week on another episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk 2.0.